Attention wrestling fans, you're now about to listen to the man coming down the aisle from the main streets of South Elgin, Illinois, with a microphone in his hand and questions on his mind. This is Whaddya Say with DDJ.
Welcome to episode 29 of Whaddya Say with DDJ. As always, I'm your host, DDJ. Gonna get right into it. Joining me this week is former Ring of Honor star Brutal Bob Evans. So grab your favorite cold beverage or hot beverage, grab a snack, get comfy, kick back, relax, and enjoy episode 29 of Whaddya Say with DDJ. And my guest this week, Brutal Bob Evans.
What's up, guys? This is Mr. 3% John Hudson here, the gold standard of professional wrestling, the doctor of Gainsonomics, the nephew to Hercules, the grandson to Zeus, the son of the mother of Gains, and the creator of Gains Babies, and you are listening to Whaddya Say with DDJ.
All right, welcome to another episode of Whaddya Say with DDJ, and joining me this evening is the one, the only. He is brutal. He is Mr. Brutal Bob Evans. Bob, how are you doing this evening?
So it's DDJ and BBE, right? Is that what it is?
Something like that. I like that. DDJ and BBE. I like that.
There you go. I love it. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Good. After you and I tag teamed and beat up these technical difficulties, I think we're finally where we need to be as far as being wired in and doing our thing. So,
You can't prevent all great matches. You have that where you gotta work everything over. We work those technical difficulties over. Now we hit the point with the hot tag. So let's do it. Let's have a nice strong showing and finish strong.
Yes, sir.
All right. So first off, tell my audience a little bit about yourself. Just where you're from. Your background history before you get into wrestling.
Sure. I grew up in a little town called Swansea, Massachusetts, about an hour south of Boston, born and raised. Moved away for a while, but I'm back there now. And I live about 1,000 feet from where my parents raised me, across the street. So that's pretty cool. Get to see kids get to see the grandparents and all that. So, just had a pretty middle class. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a librarian, and no wrestling fans in the family at all. And then started watching wrestling when Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper got big, kind of because it was, when you're in 6th and 7th grade, 11, 12 years old, that's really the prime age for something like this. So kids in school started talking about it. So I started looking around and found it and started watching it and developed a love for wrestling right there. And I first moments I remember are either, I think it was probably Hogan and Piper, war to settle the score, and then with the Mr. T and the cops and Madison Square Garden and place going crazy, and Cyndi Lauper and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I remember that, and I just remember that being mayhem. And I was a pretty good sports fan, Red Sox fan, Patriots fan, the whole thing. And but I'd never seen anything so like mayhem filled. So it was, and that piqued my interest. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I don't know if I ever thought it was like 100% real, because everybody was telling me it was fake. So I don't know if they were trying to discourage me from watching it, or just, probably just, I was a mouthy 12-year-old punk. So they were probably trying to give back to me. So, but yeah, I just started watching it and loved it all through high school, and joined I played sports in high school, but we didn't have a wrestling team. I probably would have gone out for it. Just did baseball and basketball. And then later on, when I went to college, I went to UMass Dartmouth. I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt right now.
Nice.
I met up with a guy. His name was Mark Amaral, good guy. And we decided we were going to start our own backyard group at about 19 and put it on public access, and had a number on the end of it, our home number, that said, hey, if you want to wrestle with us, give us a call. Because it was kind of like a club. It was a fun thing. we did it once a month. We did TV tapings. I wrote formats, the whole thing. And when I did TV later on for independent companies, I used the same format. So I learned something when I was doing backyard wrestling. And then a small time semi-pro wrestler. I don't even think they were called independent wrestling back then, but a semi-pro wrestler named Brian Brieger gave me a call and said, I wrestle as the Black Scorpion in a little group in New Bedford, Massachusetts called Yankee Pro Wrestling, and we'd love to have you be a part of it. And I said, are you guys like pro wrestling? He says, yeah, we're like pro wrestling, but we're very small time. And he said, but I see you guys have a lot of potential. So it was me and another guy, and the other guy went once, blew out his knee, never came back. And I'm still here 29 years later. Actually, I celebrated my wrestling anniversary, first day training, February 12th, 1992. So I just celebrated a little while ago. So, and trivia question, Brian Brieger is in Reno, Nevada now, and he trained Reno Scum, the guys on Impact. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so my little brothers are Reno Scum, which is very funny because they're both big guys. So
yeah. I think what's his name? I think it's Thorsto's the one with the mohawk.
Yes.
I think his mohawk is bigger than just about everybody.
Yes, and his body is bigger than almost anybody too. But they're good guys, and it was something. They actually went to a Ring of Honor tryout that I was coaching at, and he walked up to me and he said, "Yeah, Brian Brieger says hi." I said, "Man, that's a name from the past." He's like, "Yeah, he was our trainer." I said, "Oh shoot, that's right. He was in Reno." Yeah, so we've been keeping it. You know, it actually put me back in touch with Brian, which is great. So eventually, when things clear up, I'm going to go do a seminar at his school. You know, when I can make all that work, and it'll be fun to see him again. I haven't seen him in probably 25 years, so it'd be great to see him again. So yeah, but that's pretty much how I started, and then kind of moving right along. I just you know, I was kind of a smart mark. I was reading the Observer, and so I knew some of the terms, and that was kind of foreign to the guys because they had never heard of a fan that knew the terms, so they were pretty blown away by that. And I said, "Oh, I read this newsletter and all this." So they didn't beat me up or anything. They didn't humble me. They were actually very understanding. And I got arrogant really very quickly, even though I wasn't very good, but I got very arrogant. And you know, had a couple tough years in the beginning, and then met up with a gentleman named Jeff Costa, Bruiser Costa, who was one of Killer Kowalski's original students. And then Jeff kind of laid me out straight and taught me how to work, how to do psychology, how to put a match together, you know, be a good heel, be a good baby face, how to run shows, how to organize shows, remember that you're wrestling for the people, not for yourself. And so it was a very good education. And then later on, our buddy Steve Bradley, who was a developmental guy for a long time, Steve would try. He was from New Hampshire originally, so he's from New England. So when he'd come home from New England after doing developmental in Memphis, he would come and teach us all the drills they were doing and what they were looking for. So I kind of had an inside track on, you know, being a WWF superstar at the time in the Attitude Era. And Steve really helped me up my game. He really helped me modernize what I was doing. He said, "Look, Jeff Costa's a great trainer. He helped me out too when I was a kid, but now we have to step it up and we have to do TV work, and TV work is different." So Steve really took my game to the next level. And then at that point, I was probably 7 or 8 years in. I started doing some, and you said I'm not just going to touch on it now, but we'll talk more about it after. I started doing some WWF stuff, and then I started my own school, ran my own school for about 10 years, then decided to start wrestling for myself instead of wrestling for other people. And then I started working with Ring of Honor and went to their first tryout camp, paid my money, earned a spot, became Mike Bennett's manager and trainer. Since I was his trainer in real life, it made sense. And then started wrestling a year and a half later there part-time, and then started training at all the Ring of Honor tryout camps that they had. I was a guest trainer there for years. And then left there in 2018 and really started leaning into my own stuff, the Hangs with Bob stuff, and this new venture I'm on called the WrestleLife.com, and laid all the groundwork for that. So that pretty much brings us up to where we are today. That's the outline. Now we can hit anything you want to hit in between. So but That's like the 10-minute version.
Right. Well, we'll definitely kind of dive into a little bit more with a lot of what you cover, because that pretty much just covers your entire career and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, so when you made the decision to become a professional wrestler, what was the reaction that you got from your parents and your family and stuff, considering that none of them were really wrestling fans?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they didn't discourage it. My parents, I started training when I was 19. So my mom and dad sat me down and they said, look, you can do this as long as you don't quit college for it. And I said, no, I don't want to quit college for it. And that was funny because back then I really didn't ever want to do wrestling full time. And even when I was a kid, I wanted to wrestle. I loved wrestling. I wanted to do it. I knew I wanted to do it. But I never wanted to do it full time. I knew at a young age I wanted to be married, have kids, raise a family. Like those were always like really important to me. So I wasn't the itch to just go out on the road and do a bunch of crazy stuff. I don't mean crazy like jump to a table. I mean crazy like just go travel and all the stuff I started doing way later on in my career. I never really wanted to do it back then. So that was no big deal. So I started probably about the beginning of my junior year or maybe midway through my sophomore year. And I wrestled all through my college years. So up to that point. So yeah, I didn't get a ton of resistance as long as I stayed in school and didn't let it affect anything. And my grades actually went up because wrestling built up my self-confidence. And I went to school I got a bachelor's in business administration, and really junior and senior year, you're doing tons of presentations. And well, if you can cut a promo with no shirt on in front of 200 people, you can definitely put on a shirt and tie and look your best in front of 20 people and talk about business. So my presentations got just a million times better. I was so comfortable. And I was surprised because I said, gee, I'm not nervous anymore. I'm not nervous about getting in front of people. And then I remembered that wrestling gave me that gift. So yeah, wrestling actually helped me. I made the dean's list the last few years of my school most of the time and really upped my GPA. So I had no problem balancing that. And I didn't get a lot of resistance. I didn't get a lot of wild support either. Don't get me wrong. It was more apathy, not caring, but just kind of hands off. And we're not really sure what this is. And maybe he'll grow out of it. So I haven't grown out of it yet, but maybe someday.
So when you decided to pursue professional wrestling, talk a little bit more about, like, you mentioned your trainers and stuff, but go into a little bit more detail about, like, what they taught you, where you trained, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, like I said, I trained in a mill building in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which was about 15 minutes from my house. And I remember they said, oh, come check out our show a couple of days before I started training. So I went to their show and they had a lot of people there. They had probably 300-400 people there. They had a really good crowd. Just in an old dilapidated mill building, nothing fancy. And there was a lot of young green guys. And I wasn't impressed, which was laughable because I wasn't even in the ring. But I wasn't impressed. I said, oh boy, these guys are a joke. We'll be 2 seconds from now. We'll be killing it and we'll be so much better than them. And of course, everybody decided not to do it with me. And then I got humbled really quick. They didn't beat me up, but I learned that it was much more difficult than I expected. So everything was hard to do. Everything, even just falling down, taking a bump. Excuse me. It was quite a humbling experience, and didn't humble me for long because I had a lot of arrogant patches back early on. But I did, I loved going to practice. I went a couple days a week. I went as much as they had practice. I did all the shows. I did everything they asked me to do. But again, I got too big for my britches and burned my bridges there. And I mean, we're fine now. It's years later, but because they still run. Well, when the pandemic comes back, they'll still be running shows. But yeah, it was quite an experience in the beginning, that's for sure. And then later on, when I went to Jeff Costa, he wanted to kill me in the beginning, because the first thing I did is the first show I went to, I just changed all the matches up. I said, I'm not wrestling this guy. I'm wrestling this other guy. And because I knew I could have a match with the second guy, and I was pretty sure I couldn't have a match with the first guy. And he said, yeah, but the epitome of a good worker is to have a good match with anybody. And I was like, you know, I kind of just shrugged at him and was arrogant and scoffed. Of course, those words still echo in my head today, because that's very true. But at the time, you don't know the difference. You're just being a clown, you know? So, and I was a young guy. So, but yeah, it was, so he wanted to kill me. And then we had that same relationship for about 15 years. And, you know, we don't talk as much as we used to, but it's courteous now. But I think you always have that. There's always something there with some of the people you train. Like I've done it too. You know, most people I'm thick as thieves with, but there's people that I just, you know, I'll never see eye to eye with. And there's a lot of love and respect there still, but there's still something underneath. And you just, I don't know if it's a father-son thing or if it's just teacher-student thing, but there's always something there. So yeah, Jeff and I but Jeff really was, I mean, when he was full bore in like 97, 98, he was running probably 40, 50 shows a year. So he was pretty busy. I mean, for a little show in New Hampshire, we got out there quite a bit. So, so that was probably when I was at my busiest. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was really, those are the two people early on, like those two places early on that really laid the groundwork for me.
Gotcha. So kind of doing a little look, you know, research and stuff, you know, in preparation for this interview. Sure. It talks about that you debuted for Power League Wrestling in 1991.
Yeah, that was my backyard.
That was that was your backyard. Okay.
Yep.
So what like did it or I guess it's just, let me rephrase it. How much work was it to, you know, to do everything that you did, you know, book the show, you know, get to town and actually go out there and work? Like what was your schedule like when it was, you know, almost showtime?
Well, that stuff really wasn't that difficult, because it was kind of a bunch of friends, and like they're, you know, everybody was doing it for fun. So it was like they're, you know, friends of friends and things like that. And really it was just, you know, formatting everything and then having to cross out 10 of the things anyway, because again, you're relying on volunteers. So people don't show up and, you know, hey, I got to work tonight and people can't make it. And
right.
You know, I mean, it happens to this day. You know, sometimes wrestling isn't as big a priority for some people as it is for others. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. But, right. But yeah, it was fine. I mean, later on when I ran shows and booked places, it became, I'm working about 70 hours a week on 3 different businesses. It's, if I had to run a promotion now, I think I would do it in a much more stress-free environment where I probably just put 6 or 7 matches out there and realized it was good guys, and then maybe shoot one angle on top. I wouldn't complicate it. I wouldn't write TV. I wouldn't do any of that. That would be too time consuming. But I always believed when I wrote TV that it was a very simple formula, you know, couple matches, couple interviews, shoot an angle every once in a while. And that's pretty much it. I didn't do too much fancy business. So I kind of my TVs were a lot more like the TBS TVs, where it was match, promo, live promo in front of people, that kind of stuff. So, and I don't know if I started this, but when I did it in Power League about 30 years ago, I had never seen it before. We actually had the guys Drew Cordero actually said he was inspired by this from me. He certainly didn't steal it from me, because it wasn't anything to steal. I told him he could, you know, he did it much differently, but Drew's always innovating anyway. So, but I actually had the guys behind the crowd, the wrestlers behind the camera, cheering and yelling and booing and being a perfectly stooge crowd for us. Mm-hmm. And then, so our TVs always sounded like they had great heat, because it was all the boys, you know, cheering and all that stuff. So
right.
It was good. It was a good way to sweeten the sound without having to do any technology. And it actually got everybody a lot more into the matches. So, you know, and it was a good way to have everybody kind of watching, because you kind of had to watch almost every match aside from talking over your match. So, but yeah, as far as like work schedule and stuff, I've always worked a full-time job. The only time I didn't was April 2018 into January 2019, and it was a disastrous part of my life. So, where I got addicted, like my gambling addiction came back, and I almost threw it all away. So that's when I realized that wrestling wasn't for me full time. So even if I work a 90-hour a week wrestling job, I'll still call it my part-time thing, just for my own edification, my own labeling.
Gotcha. Okay, so so now, then also too, I'm looking here. Back in 2000, you debuted for New England Championship Wrestling. Tell me about your time there.
Yeah, New England Championship Wrestling, run by Sheldon Goldberg. It was it ended up being kind of a really cool spot because we had a lot of cool people there. John Cena had one of his only independent matches in Massachusetts there with Frankie Kazarian.
Oh, nice.
I got to meet both of them on the same day. And then when I talked to John at TV 9 years later, he still remembered it like it was yesterday. So that's probably why he's like one of the greats, because he has a steel trap memory. So, but yeah, Sheldon had a vision to, run a nice, really good independent promotion in New England. And, I started there as a wrestler. Then I was a booker there for about a year and a half. And I was the champ there a couple times, and I really enjoyed myself. Yeah, I had some really good, talented guys there. Maverick Wild, Alex Arion, Slick Wagner Brown. And like I said, Fred Curry Jr. But there were a bunch of people that were there. I mean, there were a bunch of people went in and out of the promotion. And Doug Williams made his debut in the States there.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. And he had some real good matches, and I enjoyed wrestling Doug too. He's a friend to this day. So, but yeah, it's 3, and then Sheldon and I kind of went sideways, and it's unfortunate. It's one of those things that happens in wrestling. You kind of wear out your welcome somewhere, and it was, part my fault, part his fault, and that's about all I'll say about that. Sheldon's not a bad person. He's a good guy, and it's didn't work out the way, I wish we were closer now. We were very close for a long time and don't have that closeness now, but he still runs shows occasionally, and God bless him. I hope he's doing well.
Awesome. So you basically covered that. So one of the things I was really cool that I was, again, doing my research is in August of 93, you were on an episode of WWF Wrestling Challenge where you went up against Adam Bomb, also known as Brian Clark from Chronic. So how different was it for you to, do the thing on the indie scene, and doing like your training and stuff, and then you show up one day and you're on a nationally syndicated TV program, wrestling someone like Adam Bomb. What was the differences between what you were doing at the time to showing up, and appearing on an episode of Wrestling Challenge?
Well, that was pretty nuts because I was like a year and a half in the business. Mm-hmm. And we actually were, me and a buddy of mine, Rob Veth, he wrestles as Johnny Royal. Mm-hmm. Me and Rob, we decided that we were going to go to Utica 3 weeks before and just bring our bags and try to get work. It wasn't the smartest thing to do. Because it just wasn't really done all that much, but we said, well, what the heck, we'll give it a shot. We don't know anybody in the office, and maybe if they see us, we're kind of big, strong guys. So maybe if they see us, they'll use us. And that was the time they were doing 20 squash matches a night. So they needed 18, 20 guys, maybe more. So,
right.
So it wasn't as long of a shot as you think. Now they probably use about 6 or 8 extras, but back then they used 20. So your numbers were much more improved. So we went down there. We met with Tony Gurria, just walked into the building. Remember, this is 1993. So you just walk into the building and, mate, we don't need anybody tonight, but give me your numbers. And, we have something in Lowell in three weeks, which is an hour and a half for me. So maybe we'll give you a call. And he took all our information down, but I didn't expect him to call us. And sure enough, maybe a few days later, they called us up and booked us for the show, and we got booked for Lowell. So, I went there and wrestled Adam Bomb, who was very nice. And I was a big dude. So the match is actually on YouTube, and he doesn't beat me with the power bomb because they weren't sure if he was going to be able to get me up. So he beats me with the clothesline and then hits me with the bomb after.
Oh,
so
okay.
Just in case they had to cut it out, because I was a big dude, but I got up for it. So I jumped like crazy as best I could. So, it was funny because I got a big bunch of magazines one time, and there was a Japanese program from a 1994 WWF World Tour, and Adam Bomb is there, and one of the little pictures is him tearing my face up. So it was great.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I have that somewhere too. So, it was cool. And it's like I said, it's there. It's in English. It's in Portuguese. It's in all kinds of different languages on YouTube. So, but yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Then it debuted. It was on Wrestling Challenge the weekend of my 21st birthday. So it was a nice, happy birthday to me.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
So what was it like for you to, like, actually, you obviously wrestled in the match, but what was it like for you to kind of sit down and watch it on TV?
Surreal, because I couldn't believe that they made because we didn't, and I'm not, this is just how it is now and how it was then. If you had gone in the ring back then, they would have thrown you out of the building. I mean, that was a different scenario. So now it's, 2-3 o'clock, everybody, people are in the ring, working spots out, working things out, where the TV camera is going to be. This is where I'm going to do my move to you. This is where I'm going to dive on you, stuff like that. So I get it. It's much more of a TV show. There, I didn't even see the ring until I went out to the crowd. We showed up. We were in the back the whole time. Adam Bomb says, "I'm looking for Bob Evans." I said, "That's me." Talked over the match, move for move, which was new to me because I was always taught to wrestle on the fly.
Right.
So, but he said, "Yeah, I'm going to do this, and this." And then that's it. All right, brother. Thank you. And that's it. Went over it one more time. And that was it. Really. It was a very basic, then came back and, I got to meet some of the guys I grew up watching and, got to sit next to Randy Savage for a few minutes. That was cool.
Oh, wow.
Only time I ever met him. He sat down next to me and I just shook his hand and that was it. And, you don't think to, because you don't want to be caught back then, especially like you didn't want to be taking up too much of their time or bugging them because you didn't want to be known as a mark or a rat or whatever. So I was, and plus I was still very intimidated. So I was just trying to play it cool. So that's what I did. So that was that.
That's awesome. So like what the I bet the fanboy in you, you're sitting there because how many people can say they sat there, sat next and had a short conversation with Randy Savage, one of the all-time greats. What
right.
Your inner fanboy had to be just dying to jump out.
Well, and the thing is too, it's like when I went in 1993, I was, I didn't have a lot of experience. And then when I went back in 99, I did a lot of work in, 99, I did one, but then I did a ton of work between 2000 and 2001 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised how casual it was then. But I realized the guys were younger and a lot of the guys had been job guys before. So they were treating us all way better. Plus, in 99, 2000, 2001, you might have a 8-minute competitive match with somebody, a dark match with one of the superstars. Like you wouldn't necessarily just be a guy who gets killed on TV. And even on Jacked and Metal and all that, they would give you a little something. They wouldn't just, grind you into the ground. They'd give you a little something, a couple moves or,
right.
Whatever they felt like giving you. So I was much more surprised about how much more welcoming it was. Plus, I was older. I had been around a little more. Not that I knew more people, but the fact that I probably carried myself like I belonged a little bit more. And then I went probably 15, 18 times in the next year and a half. So people started seeing me. They started recognizing me. There's people that recognize me to this day because my name is the restaurant name. So People recognized me for that. People used to say I looked like Kane. And so every time I saw Kane, he's like, I know who you are. And Michael Hayes used to like my name. So he used to, it's like you become kind of like a little rib or a little catchphrase or something. Not a catchphrase, but like a little, people remember you because of your name or whatever. It's just one of those things. So,
right.
But yeah, it was fun. I'm very fortunate because I grew up watching it in the 80s. I started when it was like pretty much on the bottom of the barrel with like all the sex scandals and things like that.
Right.
And then I was in the business and a fairly young veteran wrestler in the Attitude Era. So, and then I kind of taught throughout, the Ruthless Aggression era. And then when Ring of Honor kind of came to pass, I was an active participant and kind of a player coach. And now I'm enjoying this era, the online era, and the whatever it is, the AEW era. I don't even know what you call it, but it's I've been fortunate to be a part of a lot of cool little movements in wrestling and really interesting times. So so it was very intimidating in '93, and then much more welcoming and later on. So,
okay,
but it was it was fun.
Gotcha. That answered my next question. Is what the difference was from your time there in '93 to the '99, 2000.
Yeah, it's in a nutshell. Very much, even though the guys were and I also think the business was better, so everybody was in a better mood. I mean, if you're selling out every night and you're making nothing but money, I mean, I'm sure the guys were tired and sore and all that, but that's never going away. But they were just rolling in it. So I mean, I can't think of a crowd I went to back then that wasn't blasted out, just completely sold out. So later on, when I went to some in the mid to late 2000s, the houses were more down,
right? And
it was much more of a rehearsal, and we have to rehearse and we have to do this, and I was like, rehearse. So that was weird.
So one of the things also too, and I thought and I kind of want to talk a little bit about this, is that I guess you had a dark match against Aaron Stevens, who's better known as Damien Sandow. And it was, I guess it was his first match in the WWF and WWE. And I guess it was stated that you basically settled him down in that match and it helped him get the developmental contract that with the WWE. So what was exactly going on, during that match? Was he just over anxious, over nervous? And what did you do to quote unquote settle him down?
Well, I think it was kind of a funny day because I remember I got booked by Kevin because Kevin Kelly was my guy. And then Kevin Kelly had left Talent Relations, but in the time he had booked me so he forgot to tell whoever that I was coming. So I showed up and Bob, I don't have anything for you. You're not booked. I can't pay you. I said, but I'm, and I came super late too, which was not great, but I was pretty comfortable. I didn't care because I knew at that point I wasn't going to get signed. I didn't care about getting signed. I was going there for the money.
Right.
I kind of, my priorities started shifting. It just did, so and it was beginning of 2002, it was right before they went to WWE, I believe. So,
okay.
I believe, I'm not sure, but so they sent every other extra except for me and Aaron Stevens to a big scene where I think the APA was going to beat everybody up in a bar. I don't remember. So if I'd shown up earlier, I probably would have been one of those guys. But since I showed up later, they said, well, I guess it'll be you two. So instead of me being punished for being late and supposedly not being booked, I'm in the dark match in the building I grew up watching wrestling in.
Oh, cool.
With a buddy of mine, because Aaron and I were buddies. We knew each other. So, and I said, and to say he was a nervous wreck is just everybody's a nervous wreck in their first match. I had wrestled a few times and I knew I wasn't getting signed. So I was like, dude, we ain't getting signed. And of course he got signed, but I said, dude, we ain't getting signed. Don't worry about this. But I knew he was going to get signed eventually. I just didn't think he was going to get signed after that, And I was like, and I liked him a lot. He was a good kid. It's still a good guy. We still, we chat every once in a while. We don't see each other often, but great guy, but he was a great kid. And I just said, yeah, no. And I think he whiffed me on a drop kick early and the crowd started booing. So I snatched him and I said, hey man, it's fine. You get him back. It's fine. People make mistakes all the time. We panic right now. We're done. So I just settled him down trust me, he was fine. He was going to be fine. He had plenty of matches. He just had to, and it wasn't that I said some great words of wisdom or anything. He just needed a veteran guy to just give him 5 seconds of a little pep talk and just say, "Hey, man, we're still good. It's fine. It's my fault. We whiffed on the drop kick. I took a bump. I shouldn't have done it. It's my fault." And just kind of took responsibility and ran with it. So, and then we ended up everything I wanted to do, all kind of experimental stuff, all kinds of like crazy moves, not crazy moves, but crazy like weird stuff that I did in the indies that I was too scared to do in WWF. And I did all the stuff because I knew I wasn't coming back. And then he got signed, which was great. So we both won. And then William Regal said without a care in the world, "Hey, that match made sense." And that was it. So that was William Regal saying that I guess the match was pretty good. So
pretty good. It's pretty good. Someone of his status and stature, it's got to make you feel good when you hear something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he said it like he said it like he was mad at me, but I think he was just making his William Regal face. I don't think he was mad at me. So, but yeah, it was fine. I didn't feel any pressure because I wasn't trying to get signed, and he was feeling pressure because he was. And guess what? The right guy got signed because he was, still is a fantastic wrestler.
Absolutely.
And, a great creative mind and made the most of, he lasted a long time up there. He made the most of getting nothing. They gave him nothing. They beat him every week. And he just started running with everything they gave him. And the Mizdow thing wasn't supposed to be anything. And then it became a thing. And he got 2 years out of it?
He got a long time over, and he was over at that. I think that was probably the most over he ever was the whole Damien Mizdow gimmick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what? God bless him. And then he's doing his thing in the NWA. And I think he's about to start a podcast with another old friend, April Hunter. And that should be really cool. So they're old Kowalski buddies from way back in the day. So, and yeah, Aaron's a good dude, very talented guy. I'm glad he got a shot. Trust me, he's always been very kind when that match comes up, and he always thanks me, "Oh, Bob, calm me down." But it wasn't, trust me, it wasn't like he was a wreck and I laid hands on him and said these brilliant words. It wasn't anything like that. It was, but I've also seen it where you screw up a spot at a dark match, and I've seen people get booed out of the building. So, but I just said, "Hey man, we're fine." Because I didn't care. That's the thing. And usually people do way better. We don't care. You don't care if you get fired or not. So that's actually how Dr. Tom tells a story, kind of that's how Aaron got the Damien Sandow thing, because he was about to get fired again, he thought. So he went out there and started doing a Leaping Lanny Poffo impression. He did cartwheels and was mincing around a little bit, and all of a sudden it kind of morphed into Damien Sandow. And all of a sudden he's doing angles with DX on the anniversary show. So, where Bret Hart comes back. So, right. Come on, man. Like, it's the guy. I'm going to park here for a second.
Sure, no problem.
So, yeah. So when I take my hands off the wheel, don't think I'm doing stunt racing or anything. If I go back to work right now, they'll probably try to have me go back to work. So I'm going to give you a little while longer here. So,
I appreciate that.
But yeah, Aaron's a dear friend. And again, I don't keep in touch with him like I used to, just because I think he's in LA now, I know he wasn't in Mass for a long time. So
yeah, I think he did go out west, because I know he's been doing a lot of work, I believe, for I think he's done some appearances for, I think it's Championship Wrestling from Hollywood with Marquez.
Right. And I know he was trying to break into some acting, and he might have gotten some acting stuff. I don't know. I don't keep track of the acting world like I do the wrestling world. So excuse me.
No problem. So, okay. So now let's go to the talk about Ring of Honor. How did Ring of Honor come into the picture?
No, Ring of Honor was it was, I had a couple of dark matches. I didn't take them seriously. I was on the first indie show that Gabe Sapolsky ever saw, so I had a warm spot in my heart. But he was, in his eyes, he was just doing a broken down local indie guy a favor. He had no interest in signing me or using me or any more than that. He was just being a nice guy, offering me an opportunity. And the first couple of times I was there, I didn't really take it very seriously. And then eventually I did. because I was like, these guys, I think this place could be pretty cool. And I was never a giant Ring of Honor fan. I didn't get it until I was part of it. And then what happened was Jim Cornette, who was a friend of mine, Kevin Kelly, who was a friend of mine, took over, kind of not took over, but Adam Pearce, who I had a lot of respect for, they kind of took over the booking and they were going to run a trial camp. So I paid the money. And then I kind of did, and this is one thing for any wrestlers watching, a good way to be resourceful. I told them, I said, if I bring a bunch of my students, can I get a commission? And I brought a bunch of students. So I ended up having them all, they ended up with all the commission I made. I ended up paying for myself to go to the camp. So I went for free. Nice. And yeah, it was cool. So, but I paid my money and then I went and I had lost 40 pounds. I'd gotten in way better shape, and Kerry Silkin shook my hand and he said, you've really, shown up to work and shown up to practice and you've shown up to play. And he said, this is a new bar. We have to kind of reconsider, where you stand. And I was very touched by those words. And Kerry's always been very nice to me and very great, very good to me. So, and Jim Cornette called me a little while later and he said, well, we really don't have a spot for you wrestling, but what do you think about managing Mike Bennett? And I said, yeah. And he says, we'll kind of play off the real situation. Except you'll be like, we'll play up your situation like you're a bitter wrestler who never got a shot. And I said, well, that part's not really true. And he says, yeah, but just play it up, So I said, okay. So then we kind of played that up, and he came up with the idea of me to look like Mickey from Rocky, but he never said look like Mickey from Rocky. So I had this look for a while, where I looked like Mickey from Rocky. Then it kind of evolved into something else. And then about a year and a half in, after managing Mike, I just said, hey, can I wrestle? I said, I'd love to have a shot wrestling somebody. So I wrestled Eddie Edwards for about 7 or 8 minutes on TV. And Eddie, I had known since he was 17 years old, and I took care of him when he was 17. So he took care of me when I was 37. Wow. And he gave me a hell of a match, gave me a 50-50 match. He beat me because he should. He was a top guy. But he, like I said, he treated me like anybody else and gave me the respect. And some of the guys didn't understand why he gave me that respect, but he remembered, some smaller shows where I took care of him. And I've told him that recently. I told him that last year. I said, I remember you taking care of me and I'll never forget it. And he's like, well, we take care of each other. You took care of me when I was a kid. So, and that's the kind of person Eddie Edwards is. But so and then it kind of just evolved from there. And Mike and I split up, and then I started teaming with Cheeseburger.
Yes.
And did that for a while. And that actually came out of a camp. Brandell was very, very young at the time, and he wrestled somebody at that point. The camps were 2 days, and he wrestled somebody the first day, and I didn't think it went well for him. And I didn't like the way he was treated. So the second day I said, I don't even think I knew his name at the time. I said, give me the kid. I'll team with him. And I bet you we'll have a hell of a match. And they go, okay, you're on. So they kind of dared me. And then we had a hell of a match and put the whole thing together. And it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. And Kevin Kelly says, I think you just bought yourself another year in the company. And he goes, because you'll team with him and then you'll turn on him. And I said, okay. And then that's what happened. Exactly what happened. I teamed with him and I turned on him. And then we had a feud that feud that was all over TV, but we never had a match. We never had a pay-per-view match. We were the opener, the YouTube opener for the end of the year show.
Final battle?
Final battle. Correct. Yeah. Sorry. My brain got scrambled there.
You're for a minute.
And then, and I was kind of disappointed that we weren't on the pay-per-view, but I also said, and I also kind of framed it, this is another way to rebrand yourself, young wrestlers, since I'm kind of in the business of branding and marketing these days. What I did was I cut a promo on YouTube that got seen by a lot of people. And I said, they're too scared to put us on pay-per-view because they don't know what we'll do. And since I was a heel, it sounded like BS, but it also put us next to the pay-per-view as like a separate attraction instead of being part of the pay-per-view, being just a YouTube match. So I tried to make it as special as I could. So that was that. So that, I did what I could because they didn't always give us a lot of stuff to work with. So I just did the best I could with getting the most mileage out of it, right. And I always tried to look after the young guys and try to give them as much to do as possible. And, I did everything I could to try to stay in the national scene for a while. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So one of the last things, wrestling wise, I want to talk about is something I discovered here. And this is actually something I found to be really fascinating. I definitely want to get what your mindset was going into this and what it was like was Iron Week. What is Iron Week? What was Iron Week?
So Iron Week, I actually did two, but they, for some reason, when you look me up, the second one never gets seen. Maybe I'll have to enter that in myself, but I always forget and I get too tired and bored and I don't want to do it. So, but what happened was in 2012, when I was 40 years old, over Thanksgiving week, I wrestled seven different people that I had never wrestled before for an hour apiece, 7 days in a row, with the caveat that I couldn't take any days off of work and I couldn't, just leave my job. I had to keep everything else, had to keep my parental responsibilities, my husbandly responsibilities, my work responsibilities. Nothing changed. I just had to, but I had to wrestle these 7 people over 7 days. And that's what I did. And of course, the first day I'm supposed to do it, I'm supposed to wrestle Steve Carino, and Steve Carino is stuck in the snow, as you and I talked about earlier in the weather. But, and so I couldn't wrestle Steve Carino. So I ended up wrestling Grizzly Redwood, and they screwed up the time. So I ended up wrestling an hour and 10 minutes, and Cheeseburger was the referee for that one. So I said, well, geez, I hope this isn't how the whole week's going to go. But yeah, I wrestled Grizzly Redwood. And then that week I also wrestled Adam Cole. And then I finished, and it was I think it was called a non-sanctioned, cause he was the TV champion, but it was at the Ring of Honor dojo, but it was not a Ring of Honor match. So,
okay.
I mean, he won anyway, but it didn't matter. But, and then I wrestled, at the end of the night, the end of the week, I wrestled Vinny Marcellia, who's in Ring of Honor, who was a lot younger and a lot different back then. But Vinny was one of the guys that I looked after in New England for a long time. I wouldn't say I trained him. That's not fair, but I definitely looked after him and I helped break him in and did what I could for him. So it was really cool wrestling Vinny. But so I did that for 7 days. And I have a buddy of mine, Mike Kane, who is from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, who helped me like put together this whole Wrestle Life deal. Mike has been on my case to be doing another one, because I told him that the next reach, I probably want to do that because my son has autism and I want to do something for Autism Speaks and then do something for a few other charities. So I may be convinced at 48 or 49 years old to do this stupid thing again. So, and we'll make it bigger and we'll get somebody to sponsor it and we'll do a big charity thing. But yeah, that's what I did. And then in 2009, 3 years before, I actually rented out a hall, did it for 6 days in a row. That's why I did it for 7 in 2012, 3 years later. Mm-hmm. But in 2009, I did it for 6 days in a row. And that one I wrestled Mike Bennett and Matt Taven and a bunch of cool local guys. And that was a lot of fun too. And, but yeah, it was, it's kind of the thing I've been doing. I've wrestled a few other Ironman matches too. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. I think I got the inspiration from those guys who ran those like 60 mile super marathons or whatever through the, like over 2 days or whatever it is. Yeah. So, and, that was like a big thing about 10 years ago. So kind of got the inspiration from that. And plus it was a publicity stunt in a way. I mean, even though it was real and there was nothing fancy to it, it wasn't magic, but I kind of wanted to show people that I could do it. And I wanted to show people that, more importantly, that the other guys could do it too, because I think every single person said it to me after. They didn't always say it to me before, but they said, "Oh, I never thought I could go an hour. That was actually pretty easy." And I go, "Yeah, it was, So I don't know what the matches looked like. I mean, people said they were good, and supposedly we have tapes of them, but the guy who taped it, I don't think I've ever heard from him again. So who knows? But There's a hard drive there with some secret matches on it. But yeah, it was a cool thing. And then, like I said, now that it's many years later, I'll probably, if I do it, I'll do it for charity, raise some money. Let's raise some money for a good cause. Let's spread some awareness, so probably would be a bad idea to do it anyway with this new thing I'm doing anyway, kind of get some publicity on that, but it doesn't matter. Let's raise some money. Let's get the word out. Let's make people feel good about wrestling. We don't always have the best reputation, but let's make people feel good about indie wrestling. So, but the biggest thing is I have to wrestle people. I try to wrestle people I've never wrestled before and people that have never done that kind of a match. So, and I call it all on the fly. We don't call anything in the back.
So out of all the matches that you did for Iron Week, which would you say was probably the one that you enjoyed the most, or which one was the one that maybe stuck out the most?
Stuck out the most was probably the one I did with, he's Oni Lorcan now, but he was Biff Busick at the time.
Yeah.
Whoever my opponent was for Thursday, I remember the Thursday of that week, it dropped out. So I met him at a ring at like 1:00 in the afternoon because we just had weird work schedules. Mm-hmm. And Biff had worked right down the street from me. So I said, hey man, can you meet me and wrestle me for an hour? So I met him and we found somebody to open up a ring and we wrestled at like 2:00 in the afternoon and we got it in. So that's that. So boom shakalaka, we got it all in. But it was, so that was the most memorable. As far as the best ones, I really liked the one with Adam Cole because I always believed in Adam Cole. When I first met him, I believed in him. I had one of his first matches in Ring of Honor and I shit the beds, pardon my language. Like I just should have done better for him and I didn't. And then I ended up having like a match with him on iPay-per-view, which he was really kind for. And he got heat for because he gave me a 50-50 match. And a lot of guys didn't think that he should be wrestling me in a 50-50 match, but he held strong, and so did the Office too. So, he and like I said, he's still a good dude. Still doesn't forget where he came from, and sent my son a birthday message last year. And just
awesome.
Just a good guy, and I don't expect him to change. He's always been a quality human being anyway. And then, so that one was really fun. I had a really, really good one with Vinny Marseglia, like I said. And I said probably the third one that I really liked was one with a Boston guy who got hurt, who I think have been one of the developmental guys, is a guy named Julian Starr, who was really, really talented. So I know he's kind of tossed around the idea of coming back and wrestling, but he's still a relatively young guy, but it's such a talented man. So we had a real good match. We had real good chemistry. So, but those are probably the three that stand out the most. But they were all good in their own way. There were no stinkers. There were no bad ones, So I had one with Antonio Thomas, and he was really into MMA like he is now. So it was much more MMA match, and I'm not an MMA guy at all. So it was kind of like him putting himself in MMA stuff for an hour, and me kind of watching as I'm holding on to him for dear life. But yeah, he was, Tom's always been a talented guy. So yeah, those are the ones that really stood out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. So that's really about, I think, everything I wanted to cover on this. But before I let you go, this is the time I want you to take to get any projects, anything related to the world of wrestling, or just anything that you've got going on that you'd kind of like to get the word out about. So this is kind of where I'm going to, allow yourself to this is your time. So plug away with whatever you want, man.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's really the biggest thing I've been concentrating on, and why I reached out to you is because I'm doing a new project called the WrestleLife.com.
Okay.
And it's something that I've been toying with for the last few years, because the question I always ask myself is, why, when I'm learning all these lessons about traveling, about saving money on the road, about making money on the road, about leveraging where you are, and not necessarily what if you want to be successful in wrestling and don't want to be a national star? What if you don't want to go? What if you have a great job? What if you have a really cool wife and kids that you don't want to leave 4 or 5 times a week? Right. These are things that people have to tackle on a regular basis. And the biggest thing, because I'm pretty much the most prolific seminar guy ever. I've done over 200 now. And really about 90% of those have, maybe 95% of those have been in the last 5 or 6 years. So I've really been around the country. I've been asking people all over North America, what are you struggling with? What's your biggest issue? Biggest issue is family. I'm having trouble. My family doesn't understand. They don't understand why I want to do this, and I don't come home with any money. I'm taking time out of work, and I'm not able to replace that income. So what I do is, I educate people on the stuff to do as far as the business end of wrestling, how to run it as a business, how to put it on your taxes so it benefits you, how to make enough money where your wife or your husband isn't going to lean into you and tell you to quit. A lot of people are, unfortunately, their wives are telling them to quit because they can't make it work. So this is how you make it work. How to involve your family. And I don't mean having them tag with you, but how to involve your family in this process, how to communicate your hopes and dreams so it can be a lot more clear so they understand where you're coming from. And also how to compromise, how to figure out what works for you, the most efficient and effective ways to travel. Again, I teach people to travel where they save money on plane tickets, they save money on hotel, they save money on they get to drive in a nice car and they get to sleep in a nice hotel for the same price or less than they would if they stay in the flea bag and sleep in their car. So that's really where I'm from, because I want people to live a quality life. Like I said, it's not wrestling, it's not life, it's the rest of life. Once you become a part of this business becomes a part of you. But the biggest thing I tell people is you don't have to be a broke indie wrestler. You don't have to be a bum that's addicted on pills. You don't have to be a jerk that's, working a terrible job or has to starve himself to be on the road. You can be somebody who lives a quality life, honors their wife and kids, honors their mother and father, the people, everybody in your life, honors your friends, where you can still wrestle 50, 60 times a year, which is incredibly busy, live a nice life and make a good amount of money. I've had people, Jack Parker Jr., for example, he's not little, he's a big, strong guy, but he's a little wrestler from Arkansas you've never heard of. Jack is one of these guys who has never had one shot of national TV. Jack used to make $25 a night. If he was lucky, $30 a night. 3-4 weeks ago, he made $812 on one show with selling his merchandise. That's without his payday. His merchandise with a show with less than 50 people. Wow. He did $522 worth of shirts. His wife did a $210 screen print order. She took a $210 screen print order because they do that too. And he had an $80 pre-order for 4 shirts, 4 $20 shirts that he hadn't even printed yet. So so this is a guy who used to make, and granted, I have an interview with him, how he does it, what his process was, how he came to his mindset came to be. But Jack tells you his results aren't necessarily like that all the time. However, Jack still averages between $200 and $400 in payday and merchandise combined every single time he walks out the door. And this is a guy you've never heard of. And this is a guy who was making nothing before he met me. Now, granted, he had to do the work, but I had to point him in the right direction. So this is what we're trying to do at thewrestlife.com. And I have probably about 20 or 30 testimonials up there. I have testimonials from Anthony Green, August Gray. I have testimonial from Sledge, Brian Campbell, from Ring of Honor, Mike Bennett, who's been everywhere. Mike's been an original Wrestle Life Hangs with Bob guy. Mike's been with me for 19 years. So these are, and again, I have 20, 30 testimonials on there from independent wrestlers too. So check it out, WrestleLife.com. You get your first month for 50% off. So take a look at it. If it's not for you, that's fine. You can go on the Wrestle Life Facebook page. There's a lot of free training on there too. I have some pretty cool 10, 15-minute classes that'll give you some good tips, but really it's deeper. I have a 4-hour masterclass in there that teaches you everything you need to know to become a successful wrestler, whether you want to be full-time, part-time, or a weekend warrior. I have tons of podcasts in there. Kevin Kelly is in there now. Kevin Kelly teaches classes on how to do promos, the spoken word. Pretty soon he's going to have announcing classes in there. So, and more content is being introduced all the time. So again, thewrestlelife.com, check it out. I personally don't think you'll be disappointed. I think you'll be more than satisfied with it. And, but please send us a message. Let us know what we can do. And please let me know how it is. But yeah, check it out. It's a great new thing I'm doing. It's a way to bring my message online to people. I'm still going to be touring. I'm still going to be doing my in-ring seminars, and we will have an in-ring piece of the rest of life too when I can get back in a ring. But right now, the online presence is big, and check it out. And I think you guys will really dig it.
Cool. Well, Bob, I want to take a moment here to thank you for your time. Again, I know you're doing this while you're technically on the clock, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's the one thing about being an independent contractor that's a benefit, So the boss is telling me, "Hey, man, get back when you can." He's asking me a question right now, so
yeah, I'll get
so
you.
I'm headed back now, but on my time.
All right. Well, Bob, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. And yeah, I will appreciate it. Thank you for the stories and everything, and best of luck to you with WrestleLife.com and whatever you end up doing.
You too, my friend. Thank you very much for having me, and I really appreciate it. Good luck with your podcast, and message me if I can ever help you, okay?
I definitely will.
Hello there, wrestling fans. This is John Bullard, owner of Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, and you're listening to What Do You Say with DDJ.
Bob, I want to take a minute to thank you once again for taking the time to talk with me. Really enjoyed hearing about your journeys in the world of professional wrestling, your time in the WWF, as well as your time in Ring of Honor. Please be sure to go check out WrestleLife.com. It's a project that Bob is very passionate about, and I know he would appreciate if everyone listening to this would take a moment to go check the site out. Also, many of you know I'm a huge fan of Chicagoland Championship Wrestling and its promoter, John Bullard. He's actually become a very good friend of mine. Recently, John just had to make the announcement that he is pushing the show that was previously scheduled for April 17th back to June 12th. Now, if you've already bought tickets, they will be honored. I believe John said he would be sending out replacement tickets to everyone, and as well as a small little thank you gift. He says that this show is going to be even bigger than it was originally planned to be, and I have no reason to not believe him. So yeah, you can get all the information at ChicagolandChampionshipWrestling.com. My show, What Do You Say with DDJ, will be sponsoring a match on the show. It'll be Mr. 3% Jonathan Hudson with the Chicago Connection going up against Chip Walker. Lots of other great matches on the card. And so please go check out ChicagolandChampionshipWrestling.com. And that's all I got for you this week. Thank you to everyone for listening. And I'll see you in a week with episode 30. Yes, I'm hitting the big 3-0, episode 30 of What Do You Say with DDJ. Have a good night.
If you love professional wrestling and great podcasts, check out What Do You Say with DDJ on Facebook, Twitter, and also on ProWrestlingTees.com. In the search field, just type in DDJ and buy the best professional wrestling podcast shirt around.